Greetings, Nerd-Nighters and fans. This is Paul Saxberg from Calgary here. This is vlog number 4, describing my progress for my entry in the DFW Nerd-Nighters design competition. I've detailed this in 3 previous, so I won't do much of an overview. I just got my reverse drafting pirate-themed game. We playtested it again last night, the latest version of it. I have to say I'm really happy with how it went. I finally feel like I've been looking at this road, looking at that road, looking at the other road. Now I feel like I'm on a road that goes somewhere, and which is good because I can sense the deadline looming in the distance, and I kind of want it to be done before the deadline instead of at the very last second, because at the very last second there's no safety net, there's no room for anything to go wrong. So my goal is to have it done a few days in advance so I can figure out the rules videos and all that sort of stuff. So last night, playtested with 2 friends of mine. One is Oren Bishop. He's the designer of the phenomenally successful Kickstarter game Steampunk Rally by Rockstar Games. You may have also seen he's got an app out, game on your phone called Tesla's Revenge. Both of those are very cool. I recommend checking them out. And we also playtested with another friend of mine named Lynn. Actually, both of them are also people I do improv comedy with. So when we get together to play, it's really goofiness. Oh, look, my hat's sideways. Speaking of goofiness. Briefly, what we did last night. I've got some cards here. Show those off. Not that they're particularly impressive, and they're all out of date anyway, but I had some goals based on the previous version. I wanted to change the flow of the game. I wanted the drafting is the most creative mechanic, so I want to focus on that. I want to highlight that. The attacks, while they're very dramatic, I wanted to reduce them in frequency. I wanted them to be only happening like maybe every other turn somebody decides to attack. So I had originally had this in mind when I used the previous version of the game. I set up the scoring to be more rewarding if there was more cards in the deck. This didn't work at all, so I'm probably mostly just abandoning that idea, though some shreds of it may remain in the final scoring. What I did instead in the next experiment was, so you have cards in your hand. Actually, you can see from the back of these, those are mostly Coven cards that I'm reusing the prototype versions of. And every turn, so you're putting one into the deck, and your hand is diminishing over time. And so I say thematically what's happening is you're lying in wait. You're hiding in asteroids waiting for a convoy to go by. And the longer you wait, the better your disguise is, right? The better your ambush is going to be. So thematically how this works mechanically then is if a convoy arrives and you attack it, and there's more cards there than you have in your hand, you have successfully ambushed them. And there's going to be some modifiers and some content cards that mess with this, but that's the basic idea. Is if you ambush someone, you get a bonus. You get to use 2 dice when attacking instead of 1, and so that is kind of an arbitrary, hand-handed solution. But in practice, it really worked. It was a solid motivator for myself and the other 2 players, and almost exclusively we waited for ambushes instead of just charging in. Because the rewards are also higher, and so that was interesting. And actually, next time I playtest, I'm going to intentionally decide not to wait for the ambush a couple of times just to see how that works. But that's where I want the majority of the attacks to be happening, is as ambushes. Where am I here? I guess it actually worked really well. The reward cards, players claimed a few of them. The combat cards had to be changed because I originally had them only protecting specific kinds of ships, and that didn't work at all. So I just had an escort protects every ship that's there. I've got these privateer ships that if you don't destroy them, they damage you, which I think is going to take the form of negative points, because taking stuff away from you is it's less like I think the game's too small, and you don't want something that players can't sustain that in the game this light. It's a very light game. Our playtest only went 12 minutes, which I'm super impressed with. I normally aim for, like, I don't know, playing its half hour in a light game, but this this gives me room for additional things. So in terms of where it's going next, I still want maybe to slow down the attacks just a little bit more, but mostly at this point, I'm looking at, I think I've got my engine. I've got my engine working, and so it's a question of designing the best content for that engine and polishing the edges and, replacing this wheel with a slightly smaller, slightly bigger wheel, scaling the economy, that sort of thing. So I have mathematically figured out basically how many cards are going to come into the game on any given turn on average, and how many cards are going to go out of the game on any given turn on average. If I want one player attacking every 2 turns and it's a 3-player game, the attacking process ends with you adding 2 new cards. So that's 7 cards going in every 2 turns, or every deck will then have 1.16 cards going into it per turn on average. And every attack then will be on average against 4 1/3 cards. I worked this out on the way home on the bus, so I don't have a real thing to show you or anything, but that's my math behind it. So this means then when I balance things, I can treat the average attack, the center of the bell curve, as being going against 4 cards, and so the player's strengths have to be, like say if I end up with 50% good cards, 50% bad cards, then the players have to have the ability to most of the time defeat 2 bad cards. 3 is a challenge, right? So that's where I'm going to scale combat at, because combat actually is entirely too easy in this version. But I've got a bunch of other little tweaks I'm going to do. Like I had this really cool concept for a card, which is the distress call. And it goes into a convoy, and if that convoy gets attacked, then they send out a call for help. And basically what that means is the other 2 players can play a ship from their hand into your battle. Unless you have a bit of a take-that thing going on with the other players. Plus, this also is thematic because the fact that there's a big noisy battle happening over there makes it easier for the other players to lay low. So their hands are shrinking, they're getting better stealth at that point. And so I'm super happy with this card, but then I realized there's no special reason why it has to be a separate card. This can combine with one of the existing ships. So that's what's going to happen is some of the ships are going to have distress calls just printed on them. And if you happen to attack that particular convoy, that's going to give the other players a chance to mess with you. I've got some special ships, which I'm super happy with. I'm not going to go into those too much in this version. The other major shift I'm looking at here, because it still seems a little bit random, and this will solve that. We'll add some really interesting gambits, I think, for players to do, and it will also add more cards into the economy, because I still want to ramp that up just a little bit more so that the attacks happen against larger targets. So, I was originally thinking that the convoys, the ships, are going to have some sort of variable player content on them, like this one's slightly better treasures, this one's slightly nastier police, that sort of thing. And I thought, that's crazy. Why does that stuff have to be static? That should be totally dynamic. Every time a convoy goes out, it should have a different thing on it. So, but then I thought, this is really a kind of a problem, because you can't attach a card to the box. Like what I'd really love to do is have like an elastic or something around it, or some sort of way of attaching this card to the box. And I thought, well, I can't really do that. Then I thought what I can do instead is, if I take the box and I cut the end of it off, so it's gonna end up looking like basically, I'm sure you can imagine, I'll just describe it, if something like that, right? So we're gonna keep about 75% of the top box, and then you're gonna get to see the topmost card face up like this. So whenever I'm finished resolving an attack on my turn, I'm going to add 2 cards to it. One face up, one face down. The face up one, all the players can see, and so it says to everyone, this convoy is being led by a technology ship. Technology is one of the bonuses you can get. But only I know what's underneath that, whether it's a policeman, whether it's one of the special cards, whether it's another bonus good card, that so on and so forth. So at that point, I can send ships around and know that either they're a trap that other players might fall into, or they're a bluff, like it's a treasure and I want it to come back to me so I can attack it. And either way, you're making an interesting decision there without knowing all the variables, what the other players are going to respond to it. And that, to me, has real potential to be super interesting. Although it does involve mangling the tuck boxes, which is going to be a problem if I have to reverse that decision later. Let's see here. I think that covers everything on my notes, so I'm at 10 minutes now. I'm going to call it a day for this one here. And thanks, everybody, for your continued interest. I'll talk to you sometime soon.